The way that nations are created is really interesting. Sometimes nations are created in messy or really political situations, but often it's very honest. Intentions, good, bad, or ugly, tend to bubble to the surface. And while some nations today have come a long way from their origins, others were never really created to be actual countries. They were never really meant to last. Sometimes nations are quote unquote created as a statement, or a message, or even, in some cases, a scam. Why one man, Giorgio Rosa, decided to make his own country is up to you. Was it a bold statement directed squarely at his previous home, or a tax retreat to fill up his wallet? It's called the Republic of Rose Island, and it's quite an explosive story, literally. But before we get there, let's just take a look at who Giorgio was. Who was the man that started it all? Real quick, if you could leave a like and subscribe, it's totally free for you, and it essentially pays me. So I would really appreciate it. If you could leave a like, or a comment rather, for the sake of engagement, that would help me out a ton. Italian engineer Giorgio Rosa declared himself the president, founder, and essentially ruler of an independent country on May 1st, 1968. He was an engineer from Bologna, I think, Italy, which, yes, sounds a whole lot like bologna, and it could be related, but it's not actually that relevant. This region is about here in Italy. Anyways, this crazy engineer, what did he actually do? Well, he built a 1,300 square foot platform in the Adriatic Sea, about 7.2 miles off of the Rimini coast. Very strategically, Giorgio built this island just outside of Italy's declared territorial waters, and therefore, he believed, outside of Italy's jurisdiction. That means, in his mind, Italy shouldn't and couldn't really tell him what to do. Now, building a fixed platform in the open water is no small feat. Even today, oil companies spend millions designing platforms that can handle wave stress, salt corrosion, and shifting loads. Rosa was doing this in the 1950s with limited funding, local steel, and essentially repurposed construction materials. He designed a reinforced steel structure supported by 9 hollow pylons, each anchored into the seabed. Those pylons are essentially steel tubes that are filled with compressed air. It acts like massive legs that support the platform and also let it resist the rolling force of waves. He wasn't inventing oil rig technology from scratch, but let's be honest, he was adapting some industrial techniques for civilian use, which was practically unheard of in the 1950s. And because the Adriatic Sea is relatively shallow, he could anchor his platform in about 8 to 10 meters of water, or about 30 feet. Which made it for a barely feasible for a small team of engineers to do. To save money, he actually designed a lot of this platform himself and oversaw the welding and assembly personally, sometimes working on boats just meters above rough water. That alone makes this story one of the most underrated feats of do-it-yourself civil engineering in modern history. At the end of it all, Giorgio wasn't trying to start a revolution with this island. He was simply idealistic, an engineer who wanted to create a place independent from any government, a micronation based on freedom and experimentation or creativity. He wanted to prove that one person could build and govern their own thing, outside of the reach of a state. In fact, his idea was quite simple. A small community with a restaurant, bars, souvenir shops, a post office, and other amenities even planned in the future. He once said that he wanted to see roses bloom on the sea. Construction began in 1958, it was completed in 1967, and with the platform declared independent the following year, in 1968. At this point, and in an attempt to legitimize this country he's created, the Rose Islands started issuing its own stamps, including one that showed its location off of the Italian coast. The Republic's currency was the mil, which appeared on a stamp, though no actual coins or banknotes were ever produced. It even had a flag, a triangular flag, and which is pretty rare globally, and I honestly think it looks pretty cool. But not everyone saw Giorgio's intentions as noble. Keep in mind, this was 1968 Italy. The timing really couldn't have been worse, or maybe it was why this is happening. All across the country, students were protesting, and the universities were being occupied by police. The police were clashing with demonstrators, students, and protesters, arresting many of them and actually killing some. People were beginning to question authority significantly and who they could really trust. Italy was in the middle of what's called the Sessantato movement, maybe. I don't know. It's this word. Part of a global wave of rebellion that was shaking governments from Paris to Italy to Prague. So, the last thing that the Italian government wanted was some engineer offshore declaring independence and inviting people to come party on his tax-free island. To them, it wasn't just a weird stunt, it was a symbol of defiance. At a time when the state already felt like it was losing control. This was no time to mess with the Italian government. Officials suspected that the whole thing was just a ploy to attract tourists while avoiding taxes. And after all, Italy, if you're not in it, then you don't have to pay their taxes. And with tourism being such a big part of Italy's economy, a floating tax-free island bar didn't sound that great to them. The Italians' response, though, was swift, and within 55 days, things got heated. They demanded that the micronation disband. The UN, and pretty much every other country in the world, chose not to get involved. For obvious reasons. I mean, if you think about it, it's literally one guy declaring himself the president of an oil platform. Should that really be treated as a sovereign nation? How should the UN react? Ultimately, after 55 days, the Italian Navy actually rolled in and threatened the island. They boarded it, they seized control, and they barred Giorgio from ever returning. The military tried to dismantle the structure, but perhaps as a testament to his engineering skills, they couldn't do it easily. Eventually, they were actually forced to shoot at it and blow it up with the battleships that Italy had, and even though it wasn't simple, it took 2 separate demolition attempts to fully destroy the island. And for an engineer like Rosa, that was probably the ultimate backhanded compliment. Afterward, Giorgio and his now exiled government created new stamps commemorating the Italian government's destruction of their nation, almost like some kind of Star-Spangled Banner moment for Rose Island and the Rose Republic. The destruction of Rose Island marked the end of the Rose Republic, but not necessarily its idea. Not only did Rosa keep multiple blueprints and sketches of what called Rose Island 2.0, for decades after the first island's destruction, he talked about rebuilding further out at sea. By then, Italy had made sure that nobody could ever do that again. The UN even expanded what is normal territorial waters to a depth of coast that would allow for countries to have that jurisdiction over shallow waters, therefore effectively preventing any and all copycat micronations, for better or for worse. The concept of freedom and self-determination resonated with many Italians, especially at a time when the country was struggling politically. The whole continent, frankly, was struggling politically. The island became a symbol of rebellion, of idealism, and it even inspired multiple books and documentaries. There's actually a Netflix film, which is kind of a mid-tier comedy called Rose Island. And if you're into that sort of thing, it is pretty good, and I would recommend it. Personally, I think it'd be amazing to see a serious drama based on the story, because it kind of deserves one. I mean, you have the military rolling in, this man politically fighting the Italian government, not to mention the entire global, or I suppose not global, but the European temperature at the time really could be capitalized on in a movie like that. Giorgio Rosa lived until 2017, passing away at a ripe age of 92. And while the island is gone, the idea behind it, the dream of a man who wanted to build a place truly free, still floats in the imagination of anyone who's ever wanted to make something of their own. Rosa, he probably didn't have the money or the politics part figured out, but he did prove that a single person with an idea could physically build that working, habitable location, that perfect nation for themselves, no matter how small it is. In reality, this wasn't the first, and it probably won't be the last micronation around. And if you want to see more of that, let me know in the comments below. Please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. Again, it's totally free for you to do it, and it helps me out tremendously. Thank you so much, and thanks for watching.